Well, next on the menu is Elon Musk, you guys. Did you guys hear about this? Elon Musk said on Tuesday that he would reverse Donald Trump's permanent ban and that he would restore the former president back to Twitter if his deal to acquire the company is completed. He basically doubled down and said that, that Twitter should not have made this decision in the first place. And he said that the platform should be very cautious when it comes down to permanent bans. And he also says that he believes it was a mistake from the onset. And he says in his opinion, him and Jack Dorsey, who was formerly the CEO, he makes it very clear that he shares that opinion and that the ban shouldn't have happened. So I'm not really sure where Elon Musk is going with this. As you guys remember, Donald Trump was suspended from the platform because of the January 6th Capitol riots, and subsequently other social media platforms then followed. So we'll see if Elon Musk acquires Twitter. Is Donald Trump getting back his Twitter handle?
Donald Trump will definitely get back his Twitter handle if Elon Musk gets in. It's just a lot of real interesting stuff happening with Twitter, though. If you're like paying attention, it looks like they're like literally cleaning house over there. There's a lot of people losing their jobs and moving on. I mean, the Trump Twitter ban is a tough one, I think, for me, because banning him for life, never agree with that. That's a very slippery slope of, just removing somebody. I think that, Elon Musk likes to talk about free speech, and I just don't really understand the type of grasp that he really has on free speech. It seems like, him and a lot of people who say things and espouse views similar to his think that free speech means that anybody could just say whatever they want, whenever they want. And I mean, kind of. But, free speech doesn't mean that you have to platform hate speech. Free speech doesn't mean that you have to let people do whatever. You can have rules. You can have policies. I think that, as a politician, you should have to tell the truth. And when Trump was the president, then yes, force him to tell the truth. And if he can't, come down on him. Right now, he's a citizen. Now, if he starts a campaign and he's trying to be president again, then yeah, you got to hold him to that. But the idea of banning private citizens, I mean, I'm just not going to be with that. I can't. How do you feel, Julia?
Man, I think that's an interesting take. And honestly, I think that's actually a really good stance, because when Donald Trump did receive the ban, he was an acting president. And so there should be a requirement that he does have to tell the truth. And so I feel that my opinion aligns exactly with what you're saying. I think Harry Jefferson makes a good point that this shows how the rich back one another, especially white men. And so when you're looking at somebody like Elon Musk, who has the power and really too much power and influence over a social platform, a communications platform, we talked about this when he first was in conversation about this, how dangerous this could be. And I think that I feel like Donald Trump has the power and influence to really hurt and harm individuals. And when we think about social media, we have to think about, how do we navigate around that space and how do we make it safe, but also allow freedom of speech.
I agree. And hey, Cuddy, can you put Harry Jefferson's last comment up there? Yeah, he says he disagrees. And look, I do understand where this comes from. I think it's just hard because it is a slippery slope. And I think that people on the other side can make that same argument for some of the things that they saw in the Black Lives Matter protests. Whether I personally agree or not, that's things that they say. And then, how are we going to decide who does and doesn't get banned? I think an interesting conversation is the fact that Elon Musk is buying Twitter because he can. It's not necessarily a move to accumulate more wealth. It's going to cost him money. Some people might argue that this is more cash than he actually has at hand. And it looks like he's trying to get loans from a bunch of banks. And we know how easy it is for rich folks to get loans with very low interest rates. I think that it just shows, the wealth disparity in our country is in a really, really interesting place. I was listening to a podcast with an economist who said that when you look at third world countries and you look at the gap between the highest earners in third world countries and everyone else, the US is like literally right there to like our wealth gap is approaching that of a third world country. So when you got people like Elon Musk who are just accumulating billions and billions and billions of dollars, and they don't got nothing else to do with it, then yeah, he's going to do things like go buy Twitter, because why not? And it's like, we can't keep incentivizing that. And I just think that this is a symptom of a larger issue that, you know, our country, like we have to do something about the gap between the rich and the poor. We're letting these people amass all this money and all this power. And we've seen what social media can do in terms of being able to swing an election. We've seen what happens with the Russian bots. And, you know, we know the power that social media has over our society. So this is something that really needs to be protected. And I mean, I wish that I had the answers. You know, I'm just an observer and I could bring these observations, but unfortunately, I don't know what the answer is right now.
Man, you brought up so many important considerations, right? And I think we're living in a day and age where all of those considerations have to be brought to the table, which ultimately makes this decision, I think, for Twitter and other social media platforms so complicated. Because on one hand, we're thinking about somebody who's absolutely dangerous, who had people killed, right? Like, let us not forget that people actually lost their life on January 6th. Not to mention how many people have probably lost their lives or have been harmed in the name of Donald Trump, and how many other things have spiraled out of control for that. But when we start thinking about what the rights of a citizen has and being able to activate their freedom of speech and using platforms like Twitter or Facebook or TikTok to be able to amplify their message, we have to be very careful not to censor them so much that we lose our constitutional right, but also to make sure that those platforms are safe for other people to participate in. And I also think it's important that when we talk about somebody like Elon Musk taking over that platform, you know, this is a person who doesn't live in the real world. Let's just call a spade a spade. He is somebody that probably doesn't even know how much a gallon of milk costs. He doesn't understand the life of an everyday person. He has a ton of security around him, and he has access and resources to maintain this lifestyle in this world, this bubble that he lives in. So for him to have the authority and influence, probably solely when he acquires Twitter, it's very dangerous to have somebody like him in power, because he's just so far off the grid, right? And he's totally out of touch on what this could do when things trickle down to the very end. And so I think about that, and I think about, like, man, you know, when Elon Musk first was in conversations about doing this, to your point, snatching up Twitter just because he could afford it. You know, we're really in a day and age where things are just getting very dangerous.
Yes.
So
I know we have to move on. And look, I agree with all of those points that you made, and it just makes me think of something else. And look, I know y'all might take this as a shameless plug, but it's not. It's the same thing that we're seeing with journalism. And when I'm thinking about, you know, the First Amendment and freedom of speech, the biggest check and balance to freedom of speech is the people. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're not going to say nothing crazy in the streets because you're going to get checked. Well, you know what I'm saying? And then when you look at information and how information spreads, and it's spreading through social media, and it's like, who controls social media? It can't be Zuckerberg and Elon Musk. Like, we need credible information to get to people. And when we see local newspapers disappearing, and when we see journalism switching from being actual journalism but to turning into PR, or all being owned by big business and billionaires, it's exactly what you just said, Julia. It's people that are extremely out of touch with everyday folks who now are taking over the power of how information makes it to the masses. And it's scary.
it is scary. And, you know, we'll end on this note, but there's absolutely nothing we're going to be able to do about it.
Because
that's the thing. We can sit here and talk about it until our ass catch on fire, but there's nothing we are going to be able to do when Donald Trump gets access back to Twitter, because that's absolutely the next step. Here is what's going to happen. And Elon Musk and everybody on that board and anybody sitting alongside him, they are going to be able to control what is pushed out in volume on Twitter.
Support local media, y'all. Support local media, man. Support your Converges, your South Seattle Emeralds. Like, that's where you can get journalism that you can trust.
Facts. And right here on Clapback